Hello, welcome or welcome back to the InsTech podcast. Zoya here, and this week's episode is something a little different. I know we often say that, but this will be our first ever partners chat since InsTech became a part of Datos Insights. If that sounds like big news, it is. After building InsTech from a mission-driven meetup into a respected research and events business, Matthew and Robin have officially handed over the reins. But we are not going anywhere. And in this episode, Matthew and Robin talk about what this transition means for us, for InsTech, and for the community we've spent the last 10 years building. And of course, with all partners chats, Matthew and Robin couldn't resist diving into what's next for insurance innovation. So whether you're building a company, selling one, backing one, or just trying to stay ahead of the curve, this episode has something for you. Now let's dive into the conversation.
Robin, it's I don't know why we always end up recording this on a Friday after a busy week, but this week has been particularly busy. We've both got a new boss this week, don't we?
We do. Yes, this is the first ever partners chat when InsTech is not owned by you and I.
You started this whole business 10 years ago. How do you feel?
It's near 11 years for me. And what started as a sort of calling, like a mission, became a business, which I don't think I envisaged that at the start. But, you remember the early days, which was pitch events and trying to help early stage businesses and connecting investors and entrepreneurs and the industry together. And the business has come an awful long way since then. And it's something I think we could both, and the team, could be justifiably proud of. But there's a reason why in good democracies, presidents are only allowed 2 terms. 10 years is quite a long time. I've tried to grow the business in various ways. I did feel from the end of 24 that we've probably taken this as far as we could and that we should look for new owners. And we found really good owners, and I'm delighted.
Yeah, and it's been interesting at that time just to see some of the people, the companies who started off, got up on stage, grabbed a microphone, string a few words together, and they're now, if not unicorns, certainly on their way to being some fraction of $1 billion company all those years later. So arguably, if it hadn't been for what you did initially, they might not have got quite so far ahead.
We should probably talk about where it takes us next too, because I'm delighted with Datos Insights as a partner, and slightly dangerous ground here. But they're owned by Pamlico. They're a PE house, and I have to reveal to Wayne Mincy, who's the chairman and did much of the negotiation, that I rather perceive them to be stereotypical PE rapacious. I thought it would be a difficult negotiation, and I wondered whether PE was the right way to go. But I have to say, I thought they behaved immaculately. The longer the time the negotiations went on, the more I grew to like them. I think they're going to be very good owners for us. And they solved the 2 big problems that we were looking to resolve as part of this, which was to find a way in which we could help people in the US more than we are now, and to provide an ability to do research and consulting and advisory work in a proper professional way. We're just not properly resourced to be able to do that at scale. So, not only is it a good owner culturally, but I think it'll add a lot to what we can do for our customers, both here and in the US.
On that PE one, as Wayne explained to us this week, which intuitively makes sense when someone explains it, there are big PE firms that will go out and acquire the likes of Pizza Hut and then sort of gut them to try and make money out of it. And then there are the ones that actually look for growth opportunities. So they'll put money in for organizations they can see that they can grow. And there's a whole different way of approaching it. So it is interesting, not just about us, and this links a little bit to where I was going to go to with the experience about other organizations. We know to some extent we've sort of given some guidance to around fundraising and the choices that are out there. And I think, to your point, PE can have a bad name, but actually sometimes it can actually be very useful. One of the big lessons for me or for you was the experience of going through a sales process. We both done work, taken some advice about what it takes to sell a company. But the reality is, until you actually go through this yourself, you never quite really know what that is. And I feel that's helpful as you get back into the InsTech world, because we still are going to be InsTech, even though we're part of Datos. But it's just helping some of the people we work with understand how you position yourselves, because most of them at some point are going to want to make an exit. And some of those things you can read or you can learn, but a lot of it people don't tell you, and it's not until you kind of go through the process that you actually understand some of the decisions that you made in the past can actually be things you need to sort of deal with as you get through the process. So that was actually very helpful. I think the more people can do in advance to prepare for that, the sort of less painful it gets.
I thought that's part of my observation. I think that Datos are experienced buyers of small businesses. They know what it's like to buy a small business, and they're sensitive to the relationships that they're going to have in the future with small business owners. And that requires a certain tact and an approach to buying companies that I thought they were excellent at. The problem was, which could have been easily foreseen for those who know me, if you give me a 130-page share purchase agreement, it's going to take me a long time to read it because I have to chunk it up into little bits and read it occasionally when I've got the appetite to, because I can't sit down and read that amount and still maintain a level of focus. I don't know what's happened to me, but I can't do that anymore.
Well, you've got a lawyer background, and this sort of gets us onto our next topic, but why isn't that process becoming easier with generative AI? Because it still feels like a very traditional transaction where, to your point, everyone has to read, mark up documents. I mean, at least it's done digitally, not face-to-face these days, but it did seem that generative AI approach hasn't really entered the world of legal transactions when it comes to selling businesses yet.
We had a very good law firm too, but I think there are parallels. It's still an issue of trust, isn't it? And it's still an element of if you're in a world in which your model is a function of your chargeable time, then you have a limited appetite for cutting the amount of time. I think the model in the insurance world it's slightly different because your model is often a function of premium and less a function of time. But lawyers will fight some of this stuff as long as the insurance industry has, I think. It does neatly bring us to the whole issue of what's going on in the insurance world, because AI has completely dominating the agenda. And I'm feeling a tiny bit smug because I think in the last partners chat, which was December last year, we did our predictions for what was going to get hot in 2025. And I said Agentic AI. And it is amazing to think that very few people had heard about it at that stage. It was very nascent. And I've never seen anything, having done this for 25 years, that has gone from nearly unheard of and to this level of interest and traction as Agentic AI. I think it's completely extraordinary.
But is there a risk that people are now starting to sort of just brand themselves Agentic AI in the same way people 20 years ago branded themselves .com, probably the last couple of years stuck .ai on their business? Is that a risk now that people are just sort of, what's the equivalent of greenwashing, Agentic AI washing themselves?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it depends on who you're marketing or talking to. If you're talking to investors, then there's a massive advantage to badging yourself as Agentic AI through and through. That's getting more investor interest than anything else. But if you're then turning to the insurance industry, there are some who badge themselves Agentic AI and lead with it, particularly in the US. So the US, I think, is at least 6 months ahead of us on this. And I think there's a broader acceptance that it is a hugely disruptive proposition. In the UK, we're still 6 months behind and slightly more guarded. But interesting, there are then those who do Agentic AI but don't really talk about it. So they take the view that they need to be able to talk about the technology and its capabilities and what it does for the business user, but they don't lead with the AI or Agentic AI because they know that there will be high levels of skepticism about it. If you have the capability, how you market yourself is now really, really interesting. You can see lots of different ways in which people are approaching it.
Maybe oversimplifying a little bit, but I mean, I sort of see it plays out in two ways, and you can see parallels elsewhere. There are the people that either, when they're using technology, so Agentic AI for now will sort of talk extensively about how they're using it, and then there are others that, to your point, just get on with it. Google's a good example, not from the specific technology they're using, but the Google interface we use today is pretty much what it was 20 years ago. But of course, in the background, a whole bunch of different things are going on, but no one really cares. They just care about the fact that their Google usage is getting better all the time. But I do think it's a really interesting point you make about people just get on with it and maybe just focus on the experience being better for the customer. And that's it. Judge us on our results, trust us. And if you want to know, what's going on in the background, we can tell you that. But we're not going to lead with a label that says we're using, in this case, Agentic AI, because at some point that just becomes redundant. Everyone's doing it.
Will Ross from Federata came and spoke at our Google event. He has a really good 20 minutes on Agentic AI, where he says right now it's hype, but in a year or two it'll just be incorporated into what you do, and you won't even talk about it anymore. And what we used to think of as AI, search even, we talked about as AI, or Netflix telling you what else you might like. At some point, those were really like, wow, but they're just part of life now. And his view of this is that 2 or 3 years' time, we'll be talking about something else, and this will just be part of the toolkit.
Well, is that starting to play through now into sort of better experience for companies that are actually spending money on AI or Agentic AI?
There are two approaches, or there are two kinds of vendor. The generic Agentic AI provider, which has a fantastic toolkit and is coming into the market to say, I can change your life, tell me what you want this to do. And then there are vendors who've come in with very specific use cases. They are solving the problem. They know the insurance industry. They're using Agentic AI, and they're saying, our proposition will summarize your reports. Our proposition will give you better risk assessments, and they come in with point solutions. It's easier to sell the second, obviously. And I think that one of the things that's happening is that these solutions are being sold to underwriters. They're not being sold to CIOs or CDOs or CTOs. They're being sold to the business user. And once you go that way, the adoption has become, first and foremost, making the underwriter's life easier, which is where the money was being spent in any event. So these are just supplemental to that. But there is a bifurcation. And what I mean by that is there are those insurance companies who've decided that this is a game changer. I don't say they bet the shop on it, but they go all in and they are investing heavily in it. You can see more and more companies have a head of AI that's responsible for sort of understanding who the vendors are, or what the business cases are, and then driving through a process of trust and then adoption. And there are those who won't touch it with a barge pole. I mean, there are those who simply say, yet another hype, I've seen this stuff before. And you can see now there are two segments of the insurance industry. Those that are investing heavily in this and expecting massive competitive advantage as a result, and those who are still doing their business process outsourcing in India and just not touching it and don't believe in it and don't have any inclination to even look at it, back to our point about the curious. So I find that really interesting. I don't know how to play out. I don't even know I'm always an optimist and I always believe in this stuff. And the industry is so bifurcated. So there's people who are true believers and the people who won't touch it.
There's obviously that classic technology adoption curve, which just starts off with the early adopters and goes through the early majority and late majority. So that's not unusual with technology, but I think what you're saying is it's actually more binary than a sort of curve.
I mean, the use cases that blow my mind are people who just say, build one of these for me, and you enter your prompt and the bot just builds the tech. It could be workflow, it could be API integration, and it builds it in a minute or two before your eyes, and you're thinking, no, it can't be right. You can see two models, one in which people have a trusted relationship with the platform provider, don't intend to change that, and simply trust that platform provider to gradually adopt Agentic AI and partners who can help them with Agentic AI over time. So they take no risk and then gradually, with the same providers, gradually get a benefit over time. More radically, there must be the possibility with this technology that you can rebuild your 30-year-old infrastructure in modern open architecture using bots. Simply take your old legacy rubbish and say, with all the rules and all the data and everything in it, and say, rebuild this. Be really interesting. I mean, you just jump over all the people who spent hundreds of millions implementing some expensive policy admin system and just rebuild your old one in new tech. Who knows? Interesting.
Yeah, but I don't think, the reality is the people who've still got legacy tech are not going to be going to suddenly figure out how to use bots to do it. They're going to go back to their systems integrators or some third party to do it, but they're going to get the advantage of the lower cost. The parallel there is parts of Africa where they're just not bothering to put in a telecommunications infrastructure for telephones. It's now they've just gone straight to mobile. And frankly, as a consumer, if your device is as reliable as a landline and you've got a mobile, then who cares? And I think that's the parallel. So you get the benefit from cost but I don't think people are going to be doing it themselves. They're just going to find us somebody else, but it'll happen much quicker.
Any sign of agentic AI creeping into your world of climate space? What are the big themes there?
That space has had people working on this for 30 or 40 years. So they're both very open to new technology, new ideas, and new efficient ways of doing things. And I mean both on the people developing models and also the insurance companies that are actually using them, because you've got people there that actually could build models but are working for the insurers. And they are always looking for ways to adopt new technology. And there's a lot of people now starting to use this, albeit fairly carefully. I think the other thing that's happening in sort of parallel to this and to some extent enabled by this is hurricane models, flood models have been developing over 20 or 30 years. And the core models are pretty good. They get criticized a little bit for the not inability to forecast climate change, but forecasting climate change is incredibly difficult. And we're in hurricane season just now. We don't really know what's going to happen in 2 or 4 weeks' time with the hurricane seasons right now, let alone what's going to happen next year or in 10 years' time. But what is happening is these models are being used as a baseline. And then we're seeing quite a lot of startups coming out to sort of, it's almost like the aftermarket for your car. So you buy your car and then you buy your supercharger or your stickers or your chrome wheels. And these companies are quite cleverly not trying to disrupt the kind of established Moody's, Verisk, Cotality models. They're saying, look, we've got something that can now help you understand what's happening in 2 weeks or 4 weeks with hurricane risk or storm surge. And we use the word ecosystem a bit too much, but it really is an ecosystem because you've got your kind of core offering that most insurers have got and the brokers. And then you kind of plug into those if you're a Re-Ask or a Seven Analytics or Mitigate or Ocean Ledger and all these companies that are spawning that space. And it's just got really collaborative still. So that's really encouraging. And of course, these companies are able to do that and spin up a business because they are smart enough to use the tools that are out there. Sadly, this may all change with the way the US government is going, but historically, there's been lots of free access to data that is reliable, government-backed data. And so you can get smart people building a business using AI with freely available data and actually able to respond very quickly to a changing external environment. You get something that's actually very useful for a sophisticated user.
We did our exponential risk event in March. My first couple of days spent in the company of community. I was really struck by how different they are from the insurance community in a good way. The levels of engagement, the interest, everybody sat down before the event started. They were on time. I think we had 350 tickets sold and 349 people turned up. They are genuinely curious. They're really engaged. They really want to know what other people are doing. They really do collaborate. I was terribly impressed with the whole attitude of that community.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things going on there. One is that a lot of those people have actually done PhDs in related areas. And by definition, they're curious. And then the second part of it, a lot of those people have built careers around being analysts and modelers. I knew a lot of them 30 years ago when they got their first job, and it was incredible to have someone paying them some money. They just worked hard. They're analytically focused, and it's just built up a really strong community, which actually is also, it's got a sort of natural, certainly gender diversity into it, probably age diversity as well, actually. So that's also quite healthy. And then we saw that more recently, 1st of July, we had an event supported by Inigo, an insurance company. It's always great to see the insurers supporting these events. And a similar kind of thing to your point, we had 340 people in the room for that evening event. 60% of them were insurers, some really good topics, and really getting into some of the nitty-gritty of actually what's happening. So, yeah, I think to your point about the different from insurers and the curiosity, they've sort of been doing this longer, and it sort of foreshadows what may be happening in 30 years' time as people are starting to use agentic AI and other technology. It just becomes embedded in what you do in your career and your boss's career and on and on.
So presumably we're doing exponential risk in 2026 as well. We've got a date.
Yeah, already sold half the sponsorship slots for that and got a bigger venue, still close to the city, and getting all the support back, not just from the sponsors, but actually starting to put together the advisory panel now, and everybody's really enthusiastic from the insurers and brokers to be on the advisory panel. So really looking forward to that, putting that together. It's a lot of fun putting together the agenda for that, because you can cover quite a wide range of topics, including on the sort of margins about how do you share information with your colleagues, how do you manage stress. Hurricanes always seem to happen over the weekend, usually with a bank holiday involved, so people have to scramble in their spare time to get results. And it can be really stressful if you're somebody is a sort of junior analyst position and your company is relying on you to give them good information about loss potential that's going out to investors. So a little bit of help on how to actually manage that process as well. People really appreciate it.
We need to talk about events more generally, because we're now incredibly well organised about these things. And what I mean by that is we almost know what we're doing 12 months ahead, and we're all starting to talk to people now about who wants to do what and what the big themes are. And I feel an evolution is on the way, and a lot of people coming to us now saying, what can we do next year that's different from what's come before? So we're very open to new ideas. But I think the event world has taken that old model as far as it can. The more genuinely educational you make it, the more insights you provide, the less self-promotional it is, the more inclined people are to pay for it. From our point of view, we had a 99-point-something% turnout for your exponential event, because which was our first paid-for event. We had a very similar dynamic for the MGA event in July. If we don't charge for events, then the dropout rate is about 60%. So we have 300 people turn up and 300 people sign up and only 200. And you and I have then booked a venue and done the catering and done the... So the whole thing has a sort of natural... If we can do better events that are more engaging, less self-promotional, more educational, people will pay for it. And then those events become easier to organise. You can reduce the sponsorship cost. The whole thing has a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, and we all have to be working on that, because everybody benefits.
Yeah, although there is one event that we run that I don't think we're going to charge for that has got a very high attendance rate, and of course that is your favourite event of the year, the wine tasting event.
2nd December, members only. Honestly, the number of people who just sign up, I think it's open to sign up now. What wines are we going to taste this year? Yeah, maybe I have a future as a wine tasting organizer or something. It is still the most talked about. All this work we do, all these topics we choose, the most talked about event is still the wine tasting.
And then on the topic of sort of longer events and Agentic AI, actually, we've also had a lot of interest in that. But I think we've got a couple of, was it 1 or 2 places left for that?
1 left, 6 sponsors. The content is completely insurer, reinsurer, broker dominated. No vendors on the panels. Lots of demos. In this world now of agentic AI, you can show people things, you can spin things up, you can figure things in no time at all. It's a much more demo-friendly environment. As you know, I've been very anti-demo for almost the last 10 years, but some of this stuff is just best seen. So, yeah, very educational. Talk to insurers about what they're seeing, and lots of demos, exhibitions. Talk to the vendors. 25th of November, 1 sponsorship slot left. But there's never been a hotter topic, and the tickets are selling very well. I just like it not to be about what you could do, but about what has been done and what we've learned, so that it becomes pragmatic rather than theoretical.
Well, I think that probably almost brings us to the end. Any final closing thoughts, Robin, just before we wrap up at the end of the week?
Well, for those who are worried, you and I are not going anywhere. I think there's a sense of relief that you can share the burden now with a new owner. I'm really looking forward to it. They add a whole new, fresh set of things we can do. Will undoubtedly provide a sort of refreshment in the way we think and the way we approach things. And I'm ready for it and looking forward to it.
I think we both had a busy month or so, and probably need the weekend just to catch up. So I'll let you off early for good behaviour, and we'll see each other next week.
Thanks, Matthew. See you soon.
Well, if you've made it this far, then I'm pretty sure you found that as interesting as I did. The InsTech podcast comes out every Sunday morning, where we spotlight the latest news, leading voices, and freshest updates across insurance that you need to know about. If you would like to take part in these conversations, head to www.instech.co to find out how you can join our network and be a part of the insurance intelligence for the curious.